order the title report, because if there's any kind of an association lien, tax lien, judgment against your seller, we have to address it.
What's up, guys? Today we have special guest, Mrs. Pam Sato, the queen of escrows herself. So Pam Sato is an escrow officer here in Hawaii. She's done over 5,000 transactions over her career easily, and she specializes in working with investors. So welcome to the show, Pam.
Oh, thank you so much, Daniel. So excited to be here.
Yeah, I mean, so when I first started get into investing, like all the investors were saying, like when you start like buying deals, hard money, wholesaling, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you have an investor-friendly escrow officer. And everybody across the board in Hawaii was like, if you want to work with somebody like as an investor, Pam Sato is the one to work with. So just kind of getting into like that. When I first started, you're really helpful for me in my journey. And I just wanted to say like over the years, you worked with like a lot of investors, also non-investors, but just wanted to kind of get your perspective as on the escrow side of maybe just tell us, what does an escrow officer do, and why does what separates an investor-friendly escrow officer from just like a normal escrow officer?
So an escrow officer primarily is responsible for making sure that all parties to a transaction, their mutual interests are being met, making sure there's no unilateral decisions going on. And when you just break it down to the basic, description, it's basically making sure that the money is going to be paid to the seller in exchange for us recording the deed or mortgage or whatever it is.
So whenever somebody buys a house, you're like the middleman for the transaction.
Yeah,
right?
we're a neutral third party.
You make sure like things are happening. But I mean, so you are a neutral third party, but then you do solve problems on both sides, right? So like you're invested in making sure like that you're part of like the team to make sure that the thing happens, like that transaction happens.
We like to believe we are an extension of the team for both sides. Basically trying to facilitate where we can, troubleshoot, problem solve. A lot of times you'll have title issues that come up, or sometimes negotiation issues between both parties. So we're there to help facilitate, not necessarily manage the negotiation aspect, but just making sure that all of the interests from both parties are being met. One of the beauties of working with investors is it's a constantly evolving industry. When I first started off working with investors, I would say I maybe had like 2 or 3 who were primarily flippers here on Oahu. So they would buy one property, turn around and renovate it or upgrade it, turn around and flip it. It was like a onesie twosie kind of a transaction.
So it's very simple.
Very simple, very basic. And over the years, so I've been working with investors for probably about 15 plus years now.
Wow, okay.
We've really seen it grow, expand.
So even from like the escrow side, you've seen the investor industry kind of like take off over the last 15 years.
Oh, very much so, especially on Oahu, in Hawaii overall. One of the beautiful things about Hawaii investors is that they're not afraid to share knowledge, share resources. I feel like there's a lot of ohana spirit going on, not a dog eat dog, competitive kind of a vibe.
I 100% agree. That's one of the things I love about our Hawaii community is like we're all trying to help each other like rise together, right? So there's like a certain mentality where you just want to keep everything to yourself, but I feel like in Hawaii it's like we want to see the other guy succeed, and so like we share resources. Escrow teams, or like strategies, or even like contracts, etc.
It's very collaborative, and a lot of times I know everybody is investing in their knowledge, and they go to a lot of seminars, they network a lot, and they're not afraid to come back home and share that knowledge that they've learned. I've even seen as far as people sharing, templates for contracts or legal documents, and it's just really beautiful. And there is a housing shortage here, especially on Oahu. And it's nice to see, bottom line is we are helping the community in one way or another, whether it's helping someone get out of a really bad situation of home ownership where they're stuck, and turning around and turning it into a beautiful piece of property that can be a really nice starter home for local families.
Yeah. The thing is, like, a lot of times I think flippers get a bad rap because
Yeah.
they're like, they sell houses for more than they bought them, right? So there's obviously profit being made.
It's
but the thing is, like, you're taking a lot of times like a old dilapidated house that no one wants to touch, or they don't have the wherewithal or the resources to be able to fix.
it.
And then you're taking it and putting like making like it brand new, and then now a family can just come in as a turnkey. They don't have to worry about any fixing. Their loan can cover the entire purchase, and then now they can just come in and just live and enjoy their lives.
Yes, so, turnkey. Yeah, and it's really nice.
So, I mean, as you're kind of going through, I mean, so you've been working with investors for 15 years, and you've seen the industry kind of change in Hawaii over that time. What are kind of like the biggest changes that you've kind of seen?
So it kind of transitioned to, I think, wholesaling was the first thing to come.
So back in the day, like, there was no wholesaling, like.
There was. I'm sure there always was. It just wasn't quite as prevalent as it is today. Where I've known investors who have gone from flippers full-time to now full-time wholesalers. So it's enough where they're able to survive and sustain an entire team.
Wow. Okay. So I mean, break this down a little bit. So if somebody who doesn't know what wholesaling is, flipping versus wholesaling, what is the difference?
So a wholesaler will basically get a seller under contract to purchase the property. And then they will turn around and enter into an assignment agreement with another buyer, an end buyer. And of course, the end buyer will typically pay the wholesaler a finder's fee or an assignment fee. And basically, the transaction will be conducted between the seller and the end buyer.
Got it. So I mean, like, I think it's a way for investors like us, like as flippers, to be able to find more deals, right? Because part of the whole challenge is like finding great deals or finding deals that make sense as a flipper.
Yes.
And so if the wholesaler is like, their job is they're scouring the market, trying to find like deals that make sense. And so they'll find a seller who like meets the expectation or the numbers wise, and then they'll assign that contract to us as flippers so that we can like do the flips.
Yes, exactly.
But then like it's a more complicated transaction than just a straight like simple like purchase as a regular flipper like from the MLS.
It is slightly more complicated.
What do we need to look out for, or what is like on the escrow side? One
of the bigger issues overall, just not with investors or flipping, is elderly abuse. So we always want to be aware that the person we are speaking to or making initial contact with, having negotiations with to purchase the property, they actually are the authorized person to sell the property first and foremost. You can do that easily by reaching out to me and ask for a title report so we can verify who exactly is on title and who the decision makers are. And then the other thing too is you want to be cautious that they're not in a situation where they're being coerced into selling the property. Because that can come with huge ramifications even post-closing.
Have you guys ever experienced that where you had to like shut down an escrow?
No. Luckily we have not. But there's always that in the back of my mind when we're dealing with sellers, because we rarely get to meet them face to face. Almost all of our transactions are done via phone, online, email.
I feel like that's another big change, right? Because probably in the beginning there was a lot more in-person signings, but
and then COVID hit. And then we got used to doing a lot of mobile notary signings where the clients don't even come into the office anymore. A lot of these sellers are not even in Hawaii.
Do you think, I mean, so one of the things I was like, I think for some of our mainland deals is we actually can do like a online mobile notary for signing.
Yes.
Is that something that's like we can do over here in Hawaii?
It is allowable. It is legal in Hawaii. There are certain requirements that have to be met, certain qualifications. For example, they want to make sure that it's called a RON signing, by the way, remote online notarization.
Okay, cool.
So to qualify, you need to make sure that the signer is a U.S. citizen and that they have a U.S. passport. That's two of the preliminary requirements. Then, of course, we want to make sure that if there's a lender involved on the buy side, the lender also has to approve the RON signing. And then the buyer and seller both have to sign a consent form as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
I mean, just because like the whole thing about today is just like ease of use, and so like, we use a lot of mobile notaries, I think, which is like very helpful for us. But I see like the world, like just in general, it's changing.
It's evolving.
Like, so,
again.
Do you think like there will ever be like people are talking about using a blockchain for a title? and like those kind of things. What are your thoughts on that?
I really couldn't comment on that. I haven't been exposed to it enough to be able to form an opinion from a personal or professional perspective.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think it's still far way down the line, but it's just like something, because you always just see how the industry is constantly changing and evolving, right? So.
Constantly changing, constantly evolving as more technology comes available. For example, when I first started, there was no such thing as e-recording. It was on the mainland. But we had to physically make sure we had originals in hand, package them, and then the physical documents actually went down to the Bureau of Conveyances for recording.
So do you guys have e-recording now?
100% we're e-recording.
Oh, really?
There are rare occurrences where we have to do a simultaneous close between two different properties or two different transactions. Those are still required to go over the counter. But aside from that, everything is e-record.
That must make your life a lot easier than like doing the e-recording. Like, you're so much more efficient.
Yes. We do have the flexibility where you have people who are signing on the mainland, for example. We have the option to use scanned docs with originals to follow. And it kind of shortens the timeline when you're up against a rate lock extension, for example, or rate lock expiring for.
Yeah.
You
know, so I mean, one of the things that's cool about your job or your position is you see a lot of like all the action that's going on around the island, right? So like you see like investors who are flipping, you see people who are wholesaling, people who are doing ground up construction. And so it kind of gives you like a unique perspective on just like the real estate industry in general, right? From the agent side to the investor side. And so kind of like, I just wanted to just like pick your brain a little bit and just take your thoughts on what is your thoughts on just real estate investing in general.
I think real estate investing is one of the best things in mankind.
Explain that to us.
I'm super passionate about it in general. I consider myself one of the most blessed, luckiest escrow officers in the state, mainly because of the people that I get to work with, their purpose, what they stand for, and what fills my cup is knowing that I'm a part of that, helping to contribute to the community. When you and I first started working together, if I can share that story.
Sure. I mean, I don't know where this is going, guys, but then hopefully it's a good one. So.
I think I had the honor of helping you on some of your first transactions,
yeah, you did.
right?
Yeah, you did.
You were a brand new flipper at the time. And in a short, I mean, really short amount of time, I think less than 4 years, I have just seen you grow your team, expand your knowledge, become extremely successful, become a pillar in our investor community where people are actually turning to you for advice. And it's so beautiful to see you willing to share that and pass that on to keep it going.
Thank you.
So we can continue providing more service to the Hawaii community.
I mean, like, I really appreciate that. That's so nice of you to say. Like, I don't feel like it's completely deserved, but along the journey, what's really helped me on my path is meeting the people who can like propel you forward. And so there's a big difference in like the different quality of agents, the different quality of like other like lenders, quality of escrow officers. And I think like just like with your expertise, I feel like we solved a few challenges along the way together that like maybe another escrow officer might be not willing to kind of like to tackle, you know?
Yeah. So I think because of the number of years of experience I've had, it helps me prepare you on what to expect, help us
as an investor, you mean?
As an investor, and help to navigate the transaction to help avoid those pitfalls.
Because so like a lot of these transactions are very complicated, right? They're not the normal standard things. Even on the MLS, there's like complications all the time when we're selling, etc. And so if you had the experience of like what can potentially happen on the front end, you can kind of like either prep to like, let's make sure that we have these things in a row, so we don't run into these kinds of problems that are coming up, right?
Yeah. So one of the things I always preach is when you're dealing with a property that you're really looking into and serious about making an offer and trying to figure out if the numbers are going to work, let's pull a title report. Make sure that there's no surprises. Make sure that there's not a second or third seller that you've never spoken to, that the seller has no communication with, doesn't even know where they are. Let's make sure there's no unusual liens or old liens.
To kind of like explain to the viewers, what is a title report and how does that work?
So a title report will vary from title company. Each title company will produce their own representation of what the current picture of the property looks like in terms of they'll look at the last recorded deeds in the chain of title. They'll look at any kind of liens, either against the property and or against the parties who are on ownership.
Yeah.
And they'll determine which ones they're going to choose to show as remaining on title.
So I mean, when a lot of times when we're looking at a potential like project to start on, we'll say like, hey Pam, can you pull the preliminary title report for this project? And then once we have that in hand, we can kind of make a better determination on, okay, do we want to pursue this? Are there a lot of liens or what, like, because a lot of times when you're talking to like, let's say the homeowner or the seller, they may not know, or they may not want to disclose all the information about the property.
Right.
But then the title report kind of gives you like the official what's been recorded information.
Exactly. Yeah. Because ideally as a buyer, you're going to want us to be able to provide you with clean, clear title insurance.
Yeah.
So it depends on what the title company's perspective is.
Yeah.
And a lot of times some sellers forget that they had, or they didn't even know that they still have an existing lien on title. So the earlier you can pull that report, the more time it will allow everybody to try and address that.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want, again, is to have your PMLs already locked, your private money lenders already locked
your
up.
Hard money lenders, you're ready to sign.
Rate lock already in, and there's huge delays. Because days equal dollars, right?
No, totally.
In the investor world.
So I mean, like along your journey, that you probably solved like so many problems, but as you solve the problem, like once you solve it once, you can like reuse that same solution over and over again, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's really nice when you have a seasoned escrow officer who has gone through a lot of these pitfalls. It's easier for them to navigate through experience. Most cases we try to help you or assist you so that we completely avoid it, navigate around it.
But that's only because you've already been through it before,
because
right?
We've been through it before, therefore we're able to help, steer the transaction.
Is there any kind of like pitfalls, I guess, like you see commonly maybe with newer investors, that you're like, let's make sure we do this in the beginning so we don't run into this?
So one of the bigger ones has to do with not having the contract executed by all parties who are actually on title. So they have to go looking for XYZ relative. Another big hurdle is getting through the hard money title insurance requirements. So hard money is like, they're like commercial lenders who will lend basically on broken houses that like a conventional loan won't apply to. Exactly.
So it's like a short-term loan. It's like a lot more expensive. But it's also like money that you can like borrow for like a fix and flip project or whatever it is that you're for a short period of time, right? So
I believe most of them, the initial term is 1 year. And they do go into extension, but once you go into that extension period, you're paying huge amounts of interest per day and penalty. So a lot of our clients not only doing fix and flips, but they also do ground up construction as well. And those majority of the hard money lenders want mechanics lien coverage. And that's one of the biggest hurdles that we're facing in present time. It does.
What's a mechanics lien coverage? Can you explain
mechanics lien coverage? So basically, anytime you have anything commencing, any kind of work commencing on the property, it exposes everyone to mechanics liens.
So that's like a contractor or like anybody who's doing work on the property.
Contractor, sub, material suppliers, any of them can place a lien on the property for non-payment.
Got it.
So when you have commencement, basically it exposes everyone to the possibility of having.
When you say commencement, you mean like the project is starting.
Started.
Those are two fancy words for me.
I'm sorry. So when the project is started. And a lot of people don't realize that from a title insurance perspective, even if you have equipment or materials delivered to the property, that is considered starting or commencement. So the commencement is kind of like the legal term from a title company. Hey, the project has started. Now there's certain different like things have happened and we have different requirements at this point. So a lot of times they'll go out and they'll take photos of the property to confirm that commencement or the project hasn't started yet. Make sure materials haven't been delivered yet. Make sure ground hasn't been broken. There's no grading, no lot clearing.
So even lot clearing can be considered as
lot clearing is considered can be considered. If you already acquired the property that way,
it was already
or
like
if
clear.
it was, then it's okay. And I'm not saying that we can't close on it. I'm just saying that there's a lot more underwriting requirements we have to obtain from the parties before we can get title underwriting approval in order to be able to confirm we can provide.
And so is it like specific to like one, like the lenders, or all the lenders pretty much across the board have the same requirements?
I only know of one hard money lender that doesn't require mechanics lien insurance. Okay. For the most part, the ones that we've worked with, and we've worked with a gamut of them, they are all now requiring this coverage.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, so maybe when you're working with like these different like lenders and different like, I guess, like hard money lenders, all of them are gonna have like different requirements, and they're gonna be like they're gonna like vary on like price point, on terms, on things. It's like, and so like maybe like as an investor, I don't know if this would be really helpful for like me to come to you, Pam, and say like, hey, Pam, can you tell me like the different kinds of like products that you're seeing? Is that something that you're able to disclose, or what's like that, that?
So to be honest, I don't really follow the product part. Because the only time we would really know what you're paying or what you're getting is when we're going to go to balance with the lender and see all of their lender fees and or review the note, which I rarely ever do. So, but I have actually had a client, like we were mid escrow and he had to change lenders because basically the lender that we were ready to close with pulled out. So he asked me, he said, hey, which one do you think we're going to be able to close with successfully and faster? So because I had worked with all three of them, I had been able to kind of guide him and say, hey, you might want to consider this one because in the past, this is what we've experienced. And I think it's going to be the easiest slam dunk to close, to actually make it to closing faster.
Because I mean, you have a real unique perspective, because working with like a lot of different lenders, a lot of different agents, a lot of different like investors, and everybody kind of has like their own nuances of like what they need or what they allow or don't allow. And so I mean, I just like thinking through this right now is like, we should come to you before we do some of our projects. Like, hey, Pam, like who would you recommend or something? And like some of the lenders should give you like a little kickback and say like, hey, like recommend us to like your investors or something.
There are no kickbacks going on. It's totally not allowed.
Okay, I mean, I'm not. Oh, okay, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah, but I am more than happy to share my experience and give you an unbiased opinion. Ultimately, though, you're gonna have to be the one to make the choice, because I cannot, from an escrow standpoint, I cannot push or
so you can't steer recommend. Or you can't. I see. I
can't steer.
Okay. So I'm not. So a lot of the things I think in the world of real estate, you're not allowed to do certain things. Yeah. But when you're just starting out, like you don't know what you can and cannot do. Like, so like, especially, I mean, even as an escrow officer, you probably see some things where like, oh, you're not really allowed to do this, but then like, and so you kind of have to coach probably some like the newer investors sometimes on like the process and what's allowed and what's like not allowed.
I kind of do. Sometimes they'll ask me certain questions and I kind of have to explain to them, as much as I want to help you and as much as I know what the answer is, I can't really share it, but I will help you
point you in the right
figure
direction,
out how to get it on your own.
Got it. No, I mean that's really cool. I mean the thing is, I think a lot of it has to do like with attitude or like the willingness to try and work with people. Yeah. Because I mean, like a lot of like whether it's like a lender, whether it's an agent or escrow officer, a lot of times it's like it's not in this box like this. Yes. The conventional box or like all the like how everybody else does it exactly. Then like we don't want to touch it or we want to like deal with it.
I think perfect example is the company that I'm currently with, Title Guarantee. So before I moved over to Title Guarantee, they wouldn't touch hard money, period.
Really?
They would turn it away. And before I decided to make the move over, I met with the president and the state escrow manager, who is now my current immediate boss. And because I'm coming over with this family of investors.
Yeah, because I mean, so like just a little backside for you is like you've been a big book of business of a lot of investors who are loyal to you because of the way you're able to help work with us and solve a lot of our problems.
Yes.
So when you transition from your old company to your new company, that's what you're talking about now, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So they had to guarantee me that they would be willing and able to close these types of transactions because I wanted to make sure that my investors weren't going to be left high and dry without an escrow officer or a title company to turn to. There are, I can count on one hand, the local escrow officers. One, unfortunately, recently announced his retirement. So as far as I'm aware, there are very few out there who are knowledgeable enough and willing enough to understand how to close these transactions.
What is it about title companies that scare them with hard money?
I think it's more, I don't want to call it a laziness or an unwillingness to learn. It's just more when you are running an escrow desk, you are extremely busy with just the day-to-day of just traditional transactions. I'm talking about your regular escrow officer, not me per se. And you have to have time. You have to be have the resources, collaboration with your title officer or title manager to be able to learn what this animal is and how to go about closing it. And that does take some time. It probably took me about a year to transition from 100% traditional to being able to learn how to do hard money. And that's just hard money with one loan company and one investor. And then as you add on these additional hard money companies, additional types of investors, additional types of creative deals, I mean, you could be doing escrow for 5 years and still not know everything. I've been doing escrow for over 16 years and I still don't know everything.
I mean, that's like one of the things I like about you is that you're always willing to learn. And so I know like a lot of times it's like if there's you already have your book of business of, let's say, conventional like financing. And so whenever you learn something new, it's going to take away from your focus of like your current clients, etc. Right? And so you're gonna have to like spend all this extra time like learning, understanding, and then make sure you're not doing anything like illegal or like all with complying with all like the requirements of the title company with like the insurance and these things. And so like there's like complex things like wholesaling or buying houses subject to or some of the other creative financing things where I feel like it's a potential to expose like the title company to like, a lot of like risk, right?
Yes, a lot of exposure. And your title manager ultimately and the underwriter needs to be comfortable with assuming that risk. And so, but part of that is just like getting more knowledgeable in it. And so like the more knowledge you have, the lower is your risk. Exactly.
But then like the time it takes to build that knowledge base or to do the research is definitely like a huge amount of resources that you're gonna have to do as a title officer or as an escrow company.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, like when you first, so you guys do wholesales and you guys also do like creative financing.
Yep.
How did you kind of get like introduced to like the creative financing part of the world?
One at a time. Okay. Just people coming to me. They were either brand new referrals from other investors or the investment community, or our existing investor family coming to me and just saying, "Hey, I want to try and do a deal like this." And then I kind of help them figure out how can we structure the transaction to make it kosher. From an escrow and title perspective. And that's one of the things that I really love about it that keeps me going. I love doing creative deals.
The cool thing about creative deals is it gives like it's so much more opportunities to have like win-win situations, right? Because as an investor, I can pay a lot more money to the seller, and like the seller can get like a lot of benefits, like let's say like living there longer or like doing like getting cash before they move. There's a lot of things that you can kind of like structure the deal where like it's win-win for both sides. But the challenge is like it's very complex from an escrow point of view. So.
It can be extremely complex. It's very critical to have that initial conversation to make sure escrow understands what the end game is, what the end goal is, what the purpose is, and then make sure, of course, that both sides are understanding what's gonna be happening.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the big thing is you got to make sure, because like the seller and the buyer are both on the same page, right? Because maybe like they have different expectations, or maybe the wording on the contract is not completely clear about all the different things that are going to happen. So as an escrow officer, it's kind of like your job to make sure. I mean, like it's not really your job, but it is your job to make sure like the both parties are understanding what's happening and like they're all on the same page, right? So.
Yeah, it is. It is actually part of our job to make sure that they're on the same page, ultimately in agreement. So, you know, especially with sub 2 transactions, a lot of times the seller is promised to net a certain dollar amount. Okay. And I want to know, I asked those questions in the beginning, like, hey, are we trying to hit a certain dollar amount so that I know, and then I can alert you if there's some fees that may come up that maybe you didn't consider. Or Harpta is a big one. You know, Harpta tax withholding, it's not a fee, it's a tax withholding.
So, like, a lot of people don't know what Harpta or Firpta is. Just in like 30 seconds, can you explain what Harpta and Firpta is?
So basically for non-Hawaii residents, non-U.S. citizens, there is a state and or federal tax withholding. For federal, it's 15%. On average of the gross sales price. So it can be
for federal,
the IRS, the Firpta. It's called Firpta. So it can be pretty significant.
So that means like you're out of country.
If you are a non-U.S. citizen. For non-Hawaii residents or for people who are not claiming Hawaii residency for the current tax year, it's 7.25% of the gross sales price. So, you know, if you're dealing with a smaller purchase price and the seller is expecting, for example, to net $20K, but then we got to factor in Harpta because they're not a Hawaii resident. You know, that it can take a couple thousand out of their bottom line.
I mean, I actually lost a deal like this. Like it was actually a condo we were trying to buy. And then like the seller wasn't aware of the Harpta rules. And so I think at the time I wasn't even aware of this either. And so like we wanted to like net him a certain amount, let's say like 20 grand, right? After the end of the deal, after paying off his mortgage. But then when we were going to the escrow process, we got to withhold 20 grand for like Harpta. So you're going to basically get nothing. And so like this is like but I think a lot of sellers or even buyers like are not aware of like Harpta and Firpta because it's not a national thing. It's specific to Hawaii.
It's specific to Hawaii. California has their own and other states. But again, if you're not aware, it's important that your escrow officer asks these questions in the beginning. Because the last thing you want to do is exhaust all your time, energy, resources into getting this transaction to the signing table, only to have the seller at that time question, why am I not netting my 20K that I was promised? And then we have to explain, and then the whole deal falls apart. And that's one of the things that we try to avoid.
You know, I mean, like I know in the past, I think we had some like this brainstorming sessions where I bring a problem to you. I was like, hey, Pam, like, here's my deal. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. How can I do this from like an escrow standpoint? And you're like really like been really helpful to just like, hey, given the tools that I'm aware of, here's the things that I know. Here's how we can structure it to make sure that like it looks like this for the deal.
Exactly. And again, I can't promote this enough, but order the title report because if there's any kind of an association lien, tax lien, judgment against your seller, we have to address it unless you're willing to take it on subject to, meaning you're going to assume that whatever it is and pay it off later. It's going to dip into the seller's bottom line and affect the transaction.
I'm sorry, we kind of like went on a little short bunny trail, but then like, so for Harpta and Firpta, like, so Firpta is what, do you know what the acronym stands for by any chance?
Ooh, you're putting me on the spot.
Like, I don't even know. I don't know. Okay, so like, so Firpta is like 15% for, so if you're out of country, the state is going to withhold 15% of the sale price.
The IRS is. Okay. So we have to turn over 15% to the IRS. Okay. In addition, because assuming they're also a non-Hawaii resident, 7.25.
So you're doing 21 at that point then?
You're at what? Is it 22 and a quarter?
I mean, so it's 14 plus 7?
It's 15 plus 7 and a quarter. So 22. That's a significant chunk.
I wasn't even aware of that. So like, I mean, quick example is like, let's say someone is selling their house for $1 million. You're withholding $220,000 in potential tax from the seller.
It can be extremely hefty, and it's up to the seller to go and recoup that from the IRS and or from the state tax
So,
office.
the money goes to the IRS first, and it's the seller's job to try and get it back if they can qualify for it.
If they can qualify for a refund.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's really good to know. I thought it was only 11% or the 15%. I wasn't aware that you add them both together for
it's together. It's combined.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a big. So if they live in Hawaii, but their citizenship is out of state, then they would be like the 15%.
If they live in Hawaii and they're not a U.S. citizen, depending on what the purchase price is, it can be that 22.25% withholding for both.
That's kind of brutal.
But then there are also occurrences where the seller lives here in Hawaii. But then we find out they're not claiming they're not a Hawaii resident. They're filing as a resident somewhere else.
For like tax savings.
Yeah, like military is a great example. Or certain government employees, they're claiming residency in another state. So we are required to do that 7.25% withholding.
I see.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference when you're kind of underwriting a deal. But again, like it all goes through your title report, and the more like information you have up front when you're kind of like trying to work through it, the more you can kind of like tailor like the solution to like that deal.
Yeah.
Question for you is one of like the newer, I guess, things that have been added to the industry in the, I want to say it's been going on for like a long time, but I think it's only like recently kind of been more popularized is this whole thing of subject to, where you buy a house, but the loan stays in the original seller's name.
Yes.
So do you want to talk to us? Like, is this something that you guys do as a title company?
Yes, we do actually. We handle all kinds of sub-twos. One of the restrictions are certain govie loans. For example, we're not able to do a sub-2 on a VA loan.
Why is that?
There are certain restrictions with the VA loan itself where the buyer and seller have to actually go through a formal assumption process with the VA to get the VA approval in order for us to be able to close a transaction, in which case it turns into an assumption as opposed to a sub-2.
Got it. So what's the difference between an assumption and a sub-2?
So an assumption is where the loan is formally being transferred. So the note is formally being transferred over to the buyer. So
the original seller has like let's say like some stupid number like 2% or whatever in the VA, right?
Yeah.
And then so like normally in a subject to transaction, the notes or the mortgage stays in the original seller's name.
Yes.
And then the new owner owns the house.
Yes.
But then in an assumption, the new owner takes over that loan, takes their same rate, and assumes the loan at that point in the loan maturity.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, so it's a formal assumption where they're actually signing a new note and taking over, assuming that debt officially. As opposed to a sub-2 where everything remains under the seller's name, title transfers to the buyer, and then the buyer just kind of informally takes over the payments. Sometimes I guess the seller will assign power of attorney over to the buyer so that the buyer can contact the lender directly, or they share passwords to get the online statements, etc. And that's the basics of a
so like how did you get introduced to like the whole world of creative finance?
Again, through my investors.
Okay. So it's kind of like one at a time. Like you just they'll bring you like a new, like, hey, Pam, can we do
new
this?
idea.
And then you're like, let me check.
Okay, how are we going to navigate this? Because originally I didn't know, or maybe it hadn't been dictated yet that there was a restriction on VA or some of these other govie loans. But it recently came out officially from our corporate that we are not going to be able to do sub-2s for these types of loans. So it's kind of like, as the industry has evolved, it's kind of like the wild, wild west where we're doing this, we're figuring out how to navigate to close the transaction and how to be able to insure it. And then like a year later, after it's kind of prevalent, corporate comes down or underwriting comes down, and then they throw out additional restrictions or additional requirements.
But it's so number one is like you guys are kind of in the forefront of like figuring things out, right? Yeah. But then at the same time, it's like it kind of validates like the work you've been doing, because you're like, okay, like we see you're just trying something new, like you're figuring this thing out. We got all these deals closed. Okay, now with this new like knowledge and this new like kind of like tools, let's make sure that we keep ourselves safe as an escrow standpoint.
Exactly.
Or a title issuer
let's
standpoint.
Keep it safe. But it's a great feeling, because otherwise, if me, for example, if I hadn't been willing to try and figure out and let's just try it together and see if this works, it probably wouldn't be around in Hawaii as much. You know,
because I mean, you're one of the guys who's like leading the forefront, right? Because when it was new, let's say like 2 or 3 years ago, then like there wasn't like any escrow officers who were doing these transactions, and even to this day, there are a lot of escrow officers or companies who don't even do the subject twos, right?
I don't think so. Yeah. So yeah, you gotta have someone who's kind of willing and not afraid to take on the challenge.
Do you ever like have like situations where you like turn away and invest, like, sorry, like they're trying to like, do something, you're like, we can't do that at this point in time?
There have been a handful, and it's not necessarily that I've been afraid to try. It's just in looking at what they're trying to accomplish. It's better off that they either do it outside on their own.
I see. Without a title company, you mean?
Without a title company involved.
Do you want? I mean, like, I don't want to, like, is there something you can share? Like, I'm like really intrigued as to what kind of the transactions these would be. But you don't. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable, we don't have to. So.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm comfortable.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I don't want to give anybody ideas.
Yeah, no, I'm just like really intrigued. Like, what kind of transaction would you do outside of because I mean, for me, like, I can't think of a type of deal where we wouldn't run through escrow, and I feel like when you don't run it through like a title company, you open yourself up to a lot of risk. Yeah. Because you're not getting the title insurance, right? And you're now breaking the chain of title where there's a transfer or something that's happening that's not like insured, and so like that can cause you problems down the line when you're trying to sell the house, etc. too, right? So
exactly, yeah. So occasionally there are situations where it's just point blank not insurable for XYZ reason in the chain of title.
Yeah.
And I've actually had to refer clients to another title company to see if they're willing and able to do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can't find anybody in town who's willing to do it, so it's kind of like, okay, what do you intend to do with the property? What's your end game? Are you going to hang on to it and keep it as a rental? Okay, if that's the case, is it going to cash flow for you enough where you're willing to take on this risk by acquiring it without any title insurance, and knowing that down the line, 10 plus years, when you want to unload the property maybe, or, start trimming down your portfolio, you might not be able to sell it
to a conventional buyer,
through
right?
a conventional buyer.
So I mean, that's the one thing, like, maybe you can just walk us through, like, what is title insurance and why do people need it?
So the basics, title insurance will insure a buyer. Normally it's the sticker price of the purchase price to clear title to the property. Okay. So basically we're going to make sure that a deed is recorded, that the correct parties who are on title have executed the deed legally through notarization or run signing, and that the property is free and clear of monetary liens. So the mortgages are paid off. If there's any tax liens, judgments, NOPAs, pre-foreclosure documents, those are all being released from title, so that when you do receive title, it's clear of all of those encumbrances. Same goes with the lender. So our primary responsibility to the lender is making sure the lenders are insured in first lien position. So basically making sure that any other liens are not recording ahead of it in priority, just in case they ever have to foreclose. They want to make sure they're first in line.
I mean, I think that's a big part of it, is like the title insurance is important for the lending side, because when you're trying, like, let's say like you own a house and you want to sell it down the line, if the new buyer is going to have a lender, the lenders are the ones that really require that title insurance.
Yes, exactly. Because any kind of buyer can be willing to waive title insurance, but the lender, if
they're paying cash, right?
If they're paying cash, If they're working with a conventional or hard money lender, even some PMLs, they want title insurance.
So what would cause like a property not to be able to be insured with title?
Number one is the break-in chain of title. Title was not conveyed. Either there's a party missing, or I had one recently, poor thing, he just purchased the property last year. Whoever executed the deed, and the title company recorded it now, not us.
Okay, another title company.
Another title company recorded it. It appears it was more than likely a falsified deed, where the parties who executed it, the names did not match who's on title. And I'm not sure how that happened.
So, but it kind of slipped by the other title company.
Yeah. So now,
but they have insurance through that title company though.
He's going to have to file a claim.
Okay.
And go through the process.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he's going to be able to recoup all of his expenses because, again, the title insurance is covering him for usually the sticker purchase price. Now, all of the money he's put in.
Is this an investor or?
An investor.
Okay.
All of the money that he's put in to rehab the property, he's out. I don't think the title insurance policy is going to cover him for all of that.
Wow.
Which is a little scary.
Yeah.
And I actually, unfortunately, had to turn him away. He was trying to sell the property, but we couldn't insure it, knowing that in the chain of title, when he acquired it, it wasn't signed by the right parties.
Wow. So I mean, and this happens, right? I mean, like title company will make mistakes sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's why you have title insurance.
That's why you have title insurance. You do see this occurring. It's not a blatant falsified deed, but sometimes the family members, they forgot one person's interest.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of with inherited parties where there's so many different interests, like 1/8 here, 1/16 here, and maybe they missed a 16th. So the end person who's currently on title doesn't have 100% ownership and therefore cannot insure. So they got to go clean that up, work with their attorneys to clean that up. Another time, we still have an active escrow. Actually, it's been 3 years now.
A 3-year escrow?
Yeah. So there was a private money loan on title. We believe the original lenders, it was 2 people. We believe they're probably deceased by now based on the age of the document. But until they can locate them and actually get the death certificates or the probate proceeding documentation.
So I mean, this is an interesting case. And so let's say a private money lender has a lien on the property.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, let's say like sadly they pass away.
Yeah.
Where does that money go to? Does that still have to be cleared? Where does it go to? Or what's that process look like?
That's an excellent question. Because let's say, for example, your PML, it's one individual or it's a husband and wife, and they're on their names on the mortgage as lender are under their individual names. It's not under a trust. It's not under an entity.
Got it.
They've both passed away. So literally, you have to ask the family to go through probate in order to determine who is the authorized personal representative for the deceased party's estate to sign a release.
I see.
And then we're going to have to record the letters testamentary for the estate plus the release in order to clear it from title.
Are you able to, I'm just trying to think through this hypothetically let's say we bought a house and we have a private money lender. So Jim, he lends us, let's say $100,000 and he has a lien on the property.
Yeah.
Let's say unfortunately let's say he passed away, right? Yeah. So, but now we have this lien and we want to sell the house.
Yep.
Can we still can escrow just hold that $100,000 in escrow and still complete the sale of the house?
Unfortunately, no.
So you have to wait until that lien is released in order to
The only other way would be for the buyer who is purchasing in cash or with their own PML to waive it and to purchase it.
But if they want to buy as a conventional loan, then
there's no way because we were not going to be able to insure the conventional lender in first lien position.
Wow.
An even worse scenario is if the person has become incapacitated and they're on the mortgage, they're on there as a lender as an individual person.
Yeah.
So if they become incapacitated, you literally have to go ask their family to go through court to have a guardian or a conservator appointed, and that person who's appointed would be able to sign the release. If it's under a trust, you have to go through the motions of figuring out who are the successor trustees, get that verified.
So I mean, but you have to go through the probate process. Was going to be potentially a very long process.
It can take several months. If the person passed away out of state, it could take even longer because they have to open probate in that state.
Wow.
And then open ancillary probate here in Hawaii to be able to have the release recorded in Hawaii.
And the probate costs money too, right? So somebody's who's paying for that.
The probate itself can cost in the thousands.
Yeah.
Which who's going to pay for that?
Yeah.
Right. Another one too has to do with if your private money lender is an LLC or a business entity, and if it gets dissolved, right?
Okay.
Who's going to sign?
So what happens in that case?
We have to work with title to figure out, who's authorized to actually sign this release. is the mortgage still enforceable if the LLC or the corporation dissolved and nobody acquired it? Like, what are we going to do? So at that point, they'll make an executive decision if they're going to continue to show it and require us to get it released, either by court order, to have it expelled, or, you know, XYZ solution. Or sometimes they might determine that, hey, this company or this entity has been dissolved. It went nowhere. They're not going to be able to claim this mortgage, and maybe we'll just choose not to show it, depending on how old it is. You know?
I mean, I remember we worked with actually some sellers in the past where like they were with like some mortgage company. Yes. And then the mortgage company, like, I guess they went out of business,
doesn't
right?
exist.
And then so like they're trying to sell the house, and they're like, hey, like, we have this mortgage. It shows up for this much, but they don't exist anymore. Can we just wipe this off our records? And there's been like various things where, like, I think we talked to these one sellers where like they're like, yeah, we thought they're gone, and like, so we weren't paying anything because the mortgage company like went away. Then a new mortgage company took over, and they said like, now you owe all this money because you weren't paying. So like this these crazy things that can happen.
Additional fees. You know. So your mortgage went from $300,000 to now it's $600,000.
Yeah, because like the attorney fees, interest, and stuff and stuff. And so, but it's so crazy, like just like the things that can happen behind the scenes, and like just trying to navigate all of those like those nuances, you know.
And then another thing too is it really matters if the property is recorded in regular system versus land court system.
Okay. So like that's a big thing. I think it's only in Hawaii that we have like land court and regular court.
I believe it's unique to Hawaii where we have the dual system.
Can you explain like what land court versus regular court is, and like maybe in 1 minute or less or something?
From a consumer perspective, just understand land court is extremely strict. Everything stays on the record permanently. Regular system, not as strict. And the title company has the flexibility to choose not to show something. And in the chain of title, it'll just disappear. Whereas with land court, unless you have something officially released or you record a court order showing that it was either closed, expunged, or withdrawn, it's going to remain on the permanent land court record. So deciding to not show something, deciding to sweep an old mortgage under the rug is really hard, if not almost impossible, when you're dealing with land court property.
Got it.
Yeah. So, and that was the case with the one where we believe that the two lenders are probably deceased by now because the mortgage is that old.
I see. But it's been a 3-year escrow at this point, which is...
Yeah, they've hired private detective to try and track these people down. They've scoured the internet for public records to try and find a record or an obituary showing that they are in fact deceased. Like, it's really difficult to do in that kind of a situation where basically our seller... she inherited it, and it's actually her daughter who's trying to help her try and figure out, trying to locate these people. And it's kind of just hit a dead end.
That's crazy. I didn't even know like it would be such a hang up in case like if the PMLs were to decease or these things.
Something to keep in mind.
Definitely it changes my perspective on things. And so like,
I mean, a PML, it's one of my favorites to close on a purchase because it's so fast and easy. There's no underwriting requirements. But just if you're the investor who's actually taking out the PML, you got to think about these things. Like, what happens if this person just disappears? What am I going to do? Like, my flip is, 3 months on average, 6 months for a ground up. Like, how am I going to get this released? One of the things you might want to consider is have them execute a release up front and have an attorney hold it, a neutral attorney hold it. So that way, at least, that's your confirmation that.
What about, is that something like you guys can do as an escrow company?
No, unfortunately, no. That's taking on huge risk with having an executed release document in our possession. Not that we would be so careless about it, but it could get misplaced. It could end up in the wrong hands and accidentally get recorded before the lien has been paid off.
I see.
So that, unfortunately, that's something that we're not willing or able to accommodate. We can have the release prepared by an attorney and have it executed, and then from there, you folks would provide us instructions on who's supposed to hold it.
That's really interesting. I'm just trying to think now, like, how can we problem solve this in case
there are different types of contract management escrow companies out there who do this type of service, they primarily work on some of the sub-twos where they do formal, they collect the payment, they make sure that the payments are made, or with agreement of sales, similar situation. They would probably be one of the ones that you would turn to who would be willing to hold a release, and make sure it gets recorded when the loan is satisfied. Right. But yeah, something you guys might want to think
I mean,
about.
we might have to have like a longer conversation about this later, and just kind of like have like a brainstorming session how we can like kind of basically like lower the risk as on the investor side, right? So
exactly, because other obstacles, like not only the person falls really, really ill, they disappear, they could become incarcerated. We have a couple escrows where the people are actually incarcerated, and it's really difficult to figure out the signing because they don't have a power of attorney in place. How are we going to coordinate a mobile notary to get in there to be able to sign them? And if they don't have an attorney, we really have no way of scheduling an appointment to do that. Those are the situations that you don't really think about. You think, oh, my PML, great, I raised $75K, I can close my deal, they'll fill the back end, but you know what happens?
But so question for you, Pam. So working with, I mean, like being in the real estate industry like for such a long time, what do you enjoy about it? Like, what do you like about being an escrow officer?
My clients, first and foremost. I love my team. I have a really strong, dynamic team of very talented women. I love the challenges. I love knowing that I'm starting my day and I don't know where exactly it's going to take me. I don't know who's going to reach out to me with what creative deals coming next, or what issues are going to come up. Not that I'm not trying to attract issues. Just knowing that we have these little challenges up ahead and looking forward to being able to get through them by the end of the day. So that we can help our clients successfully close their transactions. I mean, like that's such the mindset of an investor or entrepreneur is like you're problem solving and you enjoy problem solving. You know, because I feel like as an investor, that's all we do all day. We're just trying to solve problems. Literally,
And then like once you solve it, you can use that same solution over and over. But you're constantly coming across newer and newer problems.
Yes, newer and new problems arise every day. And I think another thing that fills my cup is being able to finish my day and having that sense of accomplishment that, hey, we got through, all of these. We were able to navigate through these. We were able to help expand our relationship or solidify our relationship with certain client by me being able to help them, circumvent, navigate, get through whatever it is, this issue.
Sometimes I think like the sense of accomplishment doesn't come unless there's a big challenge. Like, so like if your day is too easy or if it's too boring, like you don't have that sense of accomplishment. It's like if I'm playing basketball against like sixth graders, right? I destroy them, but like I don't feel accomplished. But then let's say I play against like a college player or something, or like the bigger the challenge, it sucks when you're going through the challenge if you're having a hard time trying to figure out. But when you figure it out, you have like that big sense of accomplishment.
Huge sense of accomplishment, bigger pride. Of course, when you have that David and Goliath kind of a situation where it almost seems insurmountable, and when you get to the summit, you're like, you can look back and just, and especially as a woman, a local woman, public school, my parents come from very humble means. So everything that I have learned, everything I've accomplished, where I am today, I have that sense of personal pride that I instill in my team that nobody can take that away from you because you earned it. Nothing was given to us. Nothing was handed to us. We were able to get through each hurdle together. And that's why our clients love us. We can take pride in that. We also feel a sense of accomplishment, achievement, solidarity because of it.
I mean, you've definitely earned, like, I think everything you've been given or you've gotten, so like it's like we see your work, and one of the things that we like about working with you is like you're very responsive. And sometimes I worry because like you answer us like 10 o'clock at night or like on the weekends, which like you shouldn't be working. But then like you're very like, I mean, we appreciate it as investors, right? Because there's always things that come up around the clock, et cetera. And so like sometimes I worry about you because I don't want you to like get like to be overstressed or have too much like work too much. But at the same time, like your responsiveness as an investor on our side is been very helpful.
Oh, thank you. I think one of the key words is work too much. And I try to instill this in my kids. It's really important that you love what you do, that you're passionate about what you do. And for me, I don't really consider it work. When you folks reach out to me or when other clients reach out to me via text message, phone call, whatever it is, it can be a Saturday evening, Friday night, early Sunday morning. Like, to me, it's not, I don't consider it work. To be able to respond to you. I consider it helping a friend or helping a colleague or helping a partner, which it doesn't bother me at all. And I know that the faster I can respond to you, the faster you're going to be able to either act upon or respond to whomever is waiting for your answers. And it's just gonna help move things along faster.
That's a big part. I mean, so like going back to like your team and like the way that you're able to like succeed faster is the faster you're able to move the ball on the field, the faster you can like accomplish like everything. Because like sometimes there's like you're trying to move like this huge like this huge goal, but then there's like this one pebble that you can't because you're waiting for somebody. And like sometimes it's an agent, sometimes it's a seller, sometimes it's another investor partner, sometimes it's your escrow officer, you know. But like we've known whenever we're trying to move like the border past with our escrow, like we know that you guys are never like the ones that are holding things up. It's like you guys are always on the ball as far as like making sure things are happening and moving along slowly or smoothly.
Most definitely. I often tell my team, and I equate it to like a ping pong match or a tennis match. I said, just get the ball into the other court as fast as you can. Acknowledge, jump on it, respond. Don't ever let things sit on our side because we never want to be the reason why a transaction is held up. Granted, there are going to be some occasions beyond our control where we cannot give you the firm answer because we're waiting to hear back from another department or we're waiting to get a certain piece of information from an attorney or from another third party entity. But as much as possible, like act. And then the other thing too, I also press is to be proactive. Don't wait for this issue to come up where the customer has to come to you and ask you. Just with our vast knowledge and experience, you already know what's coming. Just be proactive and ask for it ahead of time. Ask for almost everything that you can think of we would possibly need ahead of time, not piecemeal. That's one of the things that kill me is to see people coming through and ask for this. And then they ask for this.
That pisses off our admin. They're like, we work with either like an agent, a seller, escrow officer, or a lender. Like, hey, can I have like your driver's license? Okay, here. Wait a day. Oh, can I have like your whatever other information card? Okay, wait another day. Wait 3 days. Oh, can I have this? I'm like, dude, why don't you just take this all at one time? Like, you know, like you knew we were gonna get this. Why do we have to like go this back and forth? And then it's what should have been like 1 hour now takes like 2 weeks. It's crazy
of going back and forth, and it's ridiculous. So we really stress looking at the whole picture, look at the whole transaction. And ask up front everything that you can possibly think of, or at least give them a heads up that, hey, we may need this, this, and this. That way, at least you can start doing the legwork to get it, or at least you're like, okay, I have that, no problem. If you need it,
I feel like, can you coach a few of like our lenders and stuff like the? It's just, I mean, sometimes it's just so painful, like, you know, like, but this is like what an excellent team or excellent company looks like. It's you're proactive and you get all the information up front and you never have the ping pong ball on your side of the court, which I love that analogy.
We try to as much as possible. I mean, we're not perfect. You know, we're growing as well. 2 of my team members are relatively new to the team. But as much as possible, we try to keep that ping pong ball on the other side. But one of the pieces of feedback that I get from some investors working with certain lenders is, why do they keep asking me for the same things over and over? Like, I literally just gave this to them. And then here we are trying to close and they're asking for me. it again. So I take that feedback and I apply it to our own team. So we try to keep a resource bank in a secured files. For example, your LLC docs, your account information for deposits, for your proceeds. We keep a bank of all of that for all of our regular investors, so that we don't have to keep asking you for things. That's
huge. So both from like when we're working with lenders or escrow is like, if we don't have to constantly send like documents to you, like it just makes our life so much easier.
Right? I mean, like there comes a time when you're like, dude, I just closed 3 transactions for you under this LLC last month. Why are you asking me for my LLC docs again? And, so we try to avoid that as much as possible. Because I do understand that your time is extremely valuable, and the less admin.
Well, maybe not my time, but our admin gets pissed off.
You as in like your team in general. So the less administrative requests we have, the easier it is for you guys. Hey, we can at least unload this part off of your plate.
And I mean, that's really key. I mean, too, like as an investor, is like the more things you can like hand off to like people that you trust and like other teams, like the more that you can accomplish. And we can just focus on, let's like find more deals, let's like run more projects, because we have like a good team on this side.
Exactly. And that comes into play with having your key 1 or 2 escrow officers that you're extremely comfortable with. They know all the parties on your team. They know who's responsible for doing which component. 9 times out of 10, they're going to have your docs already on file. They're already going to know who your favorite PML is or who your favorite hard money is. We'll know, looking at the transaction, okay, he's probably going to close all cash. Or looking at this purchase price, he's definitely going to be working with a hard money lender. So we're not going to wait until a week before closing for the hard money lender to reach out to us, which is going to cause delays. We're going to proactively be like, hey, are you working with a hard money lender on this? We haven't heard from anyone. Who is it? Can we reach out to them so that they can start sending us their lender title requirements? And that just helps expedite the process in terms of, and again, that, is part of us being proactive, right?
I mean, it's so good. I mean, like I said, it's been a pleasure working with you over these years, and we intend to do a lot more business together. And it's exactly because of this, because like you're proactive, you're good at ping pong, and also that you're like, I mean, like you have like all our information in file, and you're like you don't have to like wait for us to constantly send you the same like information. So thank you so much for just being a great partner for us all these years.
Thank you for the opportunity and for continuing to work with us. And it's such an honor, Daniel, honestly. Like, you're major, you're big time. And
I appreciate it. I mean, I feel like it's a little undeserved, but I really thank you.
No, you're extremely humble, which is one of the qualities that I love about you.
Thank you.
And I don't think you realize how big of an influence you are on the investor community. What a difference it means to someone like me to be able to continuously work with you and your team and to have your trust. It's not only fulfilling, but it makes my job that much easier, and a lot less worry for me, on where my business is going to come from and how I can support my team. It's just, there are certain things where we were talking about having to work for everything, and everything that you have is earned. But I do believe strongly that there are certain blessings out there, and you just have to be aware of what the blessings are and embrace them. So a lot of times change might come in a negative light at first, but if you embrace it and it'll turn out to be a blessing.
Change is always scary. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, the uncertainty and the unknown, right? But like a lot of times it's like the change, and then there's a lot of changes you'll make that you'll have like actually set you back, and there'll be negatives, but you have to go through the negatives so you can find that positive as well too, right?
It's exactly how I fell into working with investors primarily. So when I first started out, it was primarily traditional escrows, working with realtors, working with your traditional lenders. That was about 99% of my desk. And then when the market started curtailing, there are certain loyal clients of mine who ventured off because they were doing joint ventures with another established title company. I had to figure out a way how I was going to be able to maintain my desk and still thrive.
Yeah.
And so I believe that was the time when, more investors started coming to me. I had another one who was a mentorship who brought other investors who was actually teaching classes. And I kind of just embraced it. And here I am today.
Yeah.
95% of my desk is investors with creative deals. Who would have known, you know? But if I had just kind of dwelled on the negative, like, oh, I can't believe my realtors that I've worked so hard with for so many years are leaving me now. What am I going to do? If I hadn't been able to make that transition and shift and not be afraid of change, which I'm deathly afraid of change. I'm really stuck in my old ways. So for me, it was a huge effort and push. I don't believe I would be here sitting with you right now.
But I mean, we're glad you made that pivot. I mean, you've been a huge blessing to us. So I mean, like, thank you for making the change to work with investors.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Like, I consider myself one of the most blessed escrow officers out there because I get to work with all of you. Like, it's truly such an honor, and I'm just so grateful.
Thank you. We're grateful too. Just to wrap up this amazing conversation we had together, like, if people want to reach out to you or find out more about you, what's the best way to do that?
Just reach out to me either on Instagram Messenger, or you can email me at pam.sato@tghawaii.com. I don't know if you can put up my
we'll put all your links in the show notes.
But I'm on the title guarantee website. It's tghawaii.com. Just reach out to a local investor. They all have my contact information. But I always welcome if you are a green investor or maybe somebody who's just thinking about it. I'm more than happy to help, provide my knowledge, my kind of guidance per se on how you can get started, what the things that you're going to need in order to enter into an escrow transaction. Go into more depth of what escrow and what title is, just to give you the background information so you can understand what our role is. I also have flyers that we've created for sale by owner sellers, because a lot of times they might not know what to expect. They might be in a situation where they weren't even planning on selling their property, but they were approached by someone who is able to get them out of their dire situation. I have flyers on that. I have flyers for unrepresented buyers, the flow of the transaction, so everybody kind of has an idea of what to expect. More than happy to share all of my resources that I can. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pam. Really appreciate your time. And it's, like I said, it's always a good time to catch up together. We got to grab lunch or something one of these days soon. So yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you so much. All right, thank you. Thank you.